Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Natalie Megan. This is Weirdo Book Club, and today we will be discussing The Dare by Harley LaRoux. This is a shorty little prequel novella in the Losers series. The face that launched 1,000 ships? No, the novella that launched a couple books. And I know that my friend Rachel has reviewed this already because we kind of found this around the same time. I got this off of the trading table at BookNet Fest last year. It was at the very end and it was one of the last ones left, and it just honestly felt like it was left there on purpose for me, with me in mind. And I know that the world doesn't work that way, but sometimes maybe it does. So we found it around the same time, but she's the one who reviewed it first because she's been at this a long time. She is better at this than I am, but I took my time and today I'm bringing it to you. So hopefully by the end of this, we'll feel like we've learned something about our taste in books, something about ourselves. And if you'd like to continue your learning, you should check out today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community made by creatives for creatives with a variety of topics to choose from. So like if you want to get into ceramics, there's a class for that. If you want to learn more about AI implementation in website design, there's courses on that. Lately, I have been getting back into drawing, which I did not expect. And so I've been taking the Matchbox label techniques class, typography, vintage fonts, and text arrangement. I've seen a trend floating around where people are customizing like this print that has a bunch of little matchbooks on it with special things for their relationship or their friendships or their book club, which is what I'm doing. So I've got my base down, like all my different matchbooks. There's 12 of them for 12 months. And each matchbook is going to represent one of the books that we read together in book club. And then by the end of the year, I'm going to give it to my book club as a digital download so that they can have their own print of all the books we read together in 2025. Thought it was a kind of a fun idea, but obviously my font work is a little like weak right now. D is really helping me figure out and like brainstorm the kind of fonts that I want to work with and try to like hone in on the skills to really capture the book titles in the lettering that I'll end up doing on these matchbooks and give it a vintage feel like a matchbook would have. So I love that course. I've been having a really good time with that, but there are like thousands of classes to choose from. You're guaranteed to find something that you're interested in or something that you're already kind of good at but want to get better at. Skillshare has been really great for me personally just to get back into like creativity as a practice, like trying to be creative in some way every day. As someone who used to spend the majority of her free time drawing something or sketching something, it is nice to kind of have Skillshare here to inspire me to pick up my pencils again and just get back to drawing. It's been really fun. The first 500 people to use my code in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, which means 1 month to explore all these different avenues and categories and find something that inspires you to be creative. Click the link in the description and get to learning. Thanks again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. And now let's get back to The Dare by Harley LaRoux. So The Dare by Harley LaRoux is a 144-page dark why choose romance. It was first published in October 2019. And as I said earlier, it's the prequel in the Loser series. There are 2 other books just called, I think, Loser Part 1 and Loser Part 2, whatever.
Hello from the void. I completely forgot to record a disclaimer section. This video caused me such distress. It was one nightmare after another. But we are here and we are doing this. The disclaimer is always the same, but just know this review will contain spoilers, opinions, and general shit talking. If you are the author, friends of the author, die-hard fans of the author, or just someone who plans to read this book and doesn't want it spoiled, this review is not for you. See ya.
Let's move on to the synopsis. Jessica Martin is not a nice girl. As prom queen and captain of the cheer squad, she'd ruled her school mercilessly, looking down her nose at everyone she deemed unworthy. The most unworthy of them all? The freak, Manson Reed, her favorite victim. His name's Manson. But a lot changed after high school. A freak like him never should have ended up at the same Halloween party as her. He never should have been able to beat her at a game of drink or dare. He never should have been able to humiliate her in front of everyone. Losing the game means taking the dare to serve Manson for the entire night as his slave. It's a dare that Jessica's pride and curiosity won't allow her to refuse. What ensues is a dark game of pleasure and pain, fear and desire. Is it only a game? Only revenge? Only a dare? Or is it something more? Okay, so right off the bat, you get kind of a lot, and this is a novella. I feel like a lot was given away in that. So she shows up at a Halloween party with her bestie. A drink or dare game ensues in the place of regular beer pong, and then she ends up losing that game and having to serve her once favorite victim, the freak Manson Reed, all night. Yeah, that's like this chunk. There is a warning page in the book. We love to see it, so let's read that together. This book is intended for those over the age of legal adulthood. All characters depicted herein are over 18 years of age. This book contains graphic sexual scenes, including intense fetish, kink, and BDSM-related activities. This book is not to be used for a resource for sexual education or as an informational guide to sex or BDSM. The activities depicted within this book are dangerous, and the scenes within this book are not meant to depict realistic expectations of BDSM or fetish-related activities. This book is strictly a work of fictitious fantasy, and I gotta give you your flowers because you used the word fictitious, which is an actual word, as opposed to the word fictitious that we've seen in other monstrosities on this channel. The kinks and fetishes within, erotic humiliation, degradation, fear play, pain play, knife play, consensual non-consent, orgasm denial, boot worship, spanking, crying, blowjobs, clowns. I'm so sorry. Groups, activities, spit, bondage, public play, blood play, raw sex / sex without a condom. Reader discretion is advised. Yes, sir, bobtail it is. First of all, great list. And solid warning, no jokes in here except me giggling like a buffoon. Do like that the kinks are spelled out instead of abbreviated. Oh, I forgot to take my little barrettes out because my bangs were freaking out, so I needed to calm them down a little bit. I needed to restrain them. With consent, of course. The book is divided up into 4 parts and an epilogue, so 5 chunks altogether. The first part being the game. A lot of things change after high school. Straight A students become deadbeats. Shy nerds are suddenly married with kids. Guys who swore they were going to join the NFL end up joining the Marines instead. People make all kinds of weird decisions once they hit adulthood, like Daniel Peters, for example, decided to start inviting freaks to his parties. Okay, so here's the setup. We kind of already touched on it a little bit. It's a year post-graduation from their high school days, and hot, bitchy cheerleader Jessica and her equally hot Biffle best friend for life, Ashley, are headed to a fellow popular's Halloween party. It's always a Halloween party. They're dressed as sexy angels because of course they are.
Good morning, angels.
Good morning, Charlie.
The flimsy, barely there fabric barely concealing her nipple piercing and her thong almost on full show. Yeah. She pulls up to the very elite gated community, hands her ID to the guard that's there to check and make sure everybody's on the list, which, you know, I hope they pay him extra for that because in my mind, he serves the entire neighborhood. And this one little douchey kid is like, make sure that you follow my guest list for all my 19-year-old friends. Rich people just really are different, aren't they? Anyway, she gives him the ID. They have a creepy moment because she's dressed like a sexy angel and he is a creep. She's just about to pull into the whole thing when this big monstrous beast of a truck pulls up behind them, blinding her with his big bright lights. She looks back and she's like, OMG, you've got to be kidding me. It's that freak Manson Reed. What the heck is he doing here? Who invited him? And then Ash is like, you don't think? Probably not. And Jessica's like, God, no. Daniel would never invite that weirdo after what happened. So there seems to be some sort of a dark, torrid history between our girl Jess and Manson Reed. Hate that name, by the way. I've already said it once. I'm going to keep saying it. Hate it. I'm going to summarize all of their little scuffle for you here because it's fine, but it's, you know, Jessica was dating captain of the football team, Kyle, senior year. They were on and off and on and off and on and off. You know how it is. One of the times that they were off, or at least Jessica thought they were off, she wanted to make Captain Kyle jealous, so she just grabbed Manson one day and made out with him. Manson being the freak, the weirdo that Captain Kyle relentlessly bullied their entire school career. So when Kylzer found out, he had him and a couple of his buddies like jump, or they were going to jump Manson, but Jess warned Manson that this was going to happen, so Manson brought a knife to school and successfully defended himself. No one died, shoo, and after all of that mess, Jess just got back together with Captain Kyle anyway. High school. So yeah, anyway, the girl is messy. She also used to bully Manson through school, that should be said, like just taking jabs at him and making up rumors and all this stuff. So anyway, let's just keep going. Before they go in, they're chatting a little bit, and Ashley's like, not to make this a whole thing, but didn't you and Manson have a thing? And Jessica's like, it's not a thing.
That's not a thing!
But it kind of might have been. I wasn't really sure if it was normal to develop a crush on my nemesis, but one thing led to another, and then Kyle found out that I'd actually kissed Manson. It was social for me. But it was a great way to piss off my ex. So they get out and they adjust their clothes so that they can look hot AF when they walk into the party. And then Ashley's like, oh, Manson, 12 o'clock. Ashley gives Gretchen Wiener's vibes to me. The truck door opened. Manson was a tall, slim guy, and he looked even taller in his tight-ripped jeans and laced-up leather boots. The boots have entered the chat. He was wearing a black t-shirt and some kind of metal or leather harness that had 3 silver buckles across his chest. Not a harness. No, I'm fine. He'd had a mohawk in high school, but now his dark brown hair was slicked back. He'd put some muscle on since I'd last seen him. He wasn't bulky, but his biceps strained against the sleeves of his shirt, and his chest was tight beneath the leather harness. He also has like 1 white contact in, which I think is just like, do what you want, but he wanders by the girls, and Ashley's like, oh my God, don't look at him. And of course, like, she does. And that causes him to grin. That grin had thrown me right back in time, conjured up the image of Manson's face when he was escorted to the principal's office. I'd known what Kyle was going to do, and I tried to warn Manson that day before. I told him not to come to school. He'd come anyway. When all the boys were finally dragged out of the bathroom, Manson had been the one taken away by the campus guards. He had a big purple bruise on his cheek, a drip of blood running down his chin from a split lip, and he looked right at me as he passed. And smiled. I'd never been able to interpret the meaning of it. A warning, a threat, a promise. I don't know, girl. I don't know. Anyway, he got escorted off of the property and he never came back to school. And she'd always wanted to tell him that she was a little proud of him for standing up to Captain Kyle, but she never got the chance. And now here they all are. So they enter into the party, the estate, the house, whatever. There's like plastic gravestones and skulls and bubbling cauldrons holding like mixed drinks or sangria or something. And a cool mom named Mrs. Peters at the helm of all of this, which is concerning. Very Mean Girls coded, I think.
Happy hour is from 4 to 6.
They grab something to drink and they head outside to meet up with Daniel, who is, what the F? Drinking with Manson Reed. When did they become buddy-buddies? Why is he staring at you? Ashley said, holding her cup to her mouth to mask her lips. She was right. Manson's eyes had fallen on me and had yet to look away. There was recognition in his gaze, and I wondered what memory came up for him first. Was it me glancing at him in silence as I walked through the hall holding Kyle's hand? Or was it my face inches from his own before we kissed as I whispered, promise not to tell? Bitch, you are so messy. So anyway, they stand around contemplating like how they became friends in the first place, and she's like revisiting these memories that she has with such a weirdo that she kind of still finds hot. And a game of beer pong is happening. It ends. So her and Ashley step up to challenge the winners because she's always been really competitive. And Manson is watching her the whole time, leather harness and all. She tells us a little bit too, like she always kind of had a crush on him and she just doesn't understand why, like why Manson Reed. And it is difficult, you know, when you're in a high school environment or an environment in general where there's a lot of clicking going on. There's cliques that you think you fit into more than the others and you're not confident enough to like branch out on your own. But you see someone that kind of challenges the status quo. It's very High School Musical. And then you have to kind of come to terms with what it is and make a decision. Do you venture out on your own? Do you
Go my own way?
Is this the
Start of something new?
That's a lot of High School Musical jokes, and I hope that you all got them. And if you did, we're best friends now. I don't make the rules. So instead of them challenging the winners, what actually happens is that Manson steps up and he's like, I'll challenge you, except I just want to challenge Jessica. Just me and Jess. And she's like, as if, and he's like, scared you'll lose. And as she just told us, she's very competitive. So we're playing this game. But he changes the rules. Drink or dare, he exclaimed. Same house rules, except if you make it in one of your opponent's dare cups, they have the option to do your dare instead of lose the cup. He smiled slyly. Any dare you want, no boundaries. Then she gives him like a jab about like, okay, well, prepare to be humiliated, Manson. I mean, wait, that's totally what you're used to, so it won't be so big of a deal, right? And people laugh because they've never heard a joke before. So you do remember my name. I'm flattered, Jessica. Miss Popular remembers who I am. Oh, wow. His voice was dripping with sarcasm. He lined up his shot and said, I guess I was such a good kisser that you can't forget my name. And then they banter, they bicker back and forth. He's like, how's Kyle been? She's like, well, no, I broke up with him. He's like, aw, prom king and queen broke up. And she's like, I didn't know Daniel started inviting dogs to his party. Boo. More laughter because these people have never heard jokes before. There's no other excuse for it. He's like, everybody likes dogs. She's like, still carrying knives around? He's like, always. Ugh. So she makes it into a dare cup and dares him to go inside, stick his head in the toilet and flush it. Like, listen, that's not even a good dare. That's like not, that's the least fun thing. I know you have to start small, but it's so cheesy. Anyway, he decides not to take that dare, and then he tosses a ball and hits it into one of her dare cups. Or whatever's going on. You know what I mean? Oh, Jess, he shook his head. Jess, don't you know you're supposed to grow up after high school? We're all adults here. He tossed the ball and made it in. A dare for me, too. But I guess some of us really did peak in high school. What's your dare? There was no way I was losing this game. I would take whatever dare he gave me. He didn't even hesitate. He's just been waiting for the opportunity to say it. Kiss my boots, bitch. I don't have a thing for this whole boot degradation thing. However, I've also never encountered it in a book before. I'm sad to see how this plays out. So she has to kiss his boots for 60 seconds. And she does. Ashley's standing off to the side, horrified. Like, girl, get up. Jess is like having an internal struggle with herself because she has a reputation to uphold. I don't really know what that reputation is, but she is determined to keep it. And she also low-key really wants to do this because she finds Manson Reed very hot and always has. You know, what are you gonna do? Well, I'll tell you what she's gonna do. She drops to her knees. I glance up. Manson smirked down. You look a lot better on your knees, Jess, he said softly, soft enough that I don't think anyone else could have heard him over the music. Enjoying your revenge? I hissed. He laughed, shaking his head. It's just a dare, Jess. Just a game. It wasn't just a game. She's down there for 60 seconds and she tells us about it. I've never done this. So I would just assume you just on the boot and hold it there for 60 seconds. Not our girl, Jessica. Oh no. Why was this turning me on? I kissed up to the toe until I reached the curve of his ankle. I kissed there too, where the leather was worn. I wondered what it would be like to run my tongue over it, to feel the texture of the leather, to savor it just once. It was the longest minute of my life. So Jessica is clearly learning a little bit about herself tonight. That's great. She is also, what? Yeah, my feels so warm. It was as if she was blushing too. Get out. As she is making the rounds on the entire boot, which, you know, you got to give it to her for the dedication, she is imagining what it would be like for the other boot to just come down and step on her face. And again, it just seems like our girl has a little bit of some stuff that she's trying to work out within herself. Some stuff she might be interested in that she didn't know about until this moment. And good for her. So the 60 seconds is up. She wanders back over to her side of the table and Ashley's like, you're like really red. Are you good? Jess knows that the answer is no. She is warm and wet and ready to go. But she has a reputation, okay? She can't just be saying that out loud. They do a couple more tosses and she gets another dare. Just give me the dare. I groaned, certain that Manson was going to come up with something evil. Someone handed him a mixed drink that he took a long sip of, and seeing the camaraderie grated on my nerves. Why did people like him? Why did everyone decide to be nice to the freak? I don't know, you like him too. Why don't we unpack that first? It's for 2 cups, he warned, so it's gonna be a hard one. You don't scare me, Manson. No, he turned you on. That's a whole other kind of thing. A lie. He did scare me with one white eye, that confident grin, and my kiss marks on his boots. He seemed like he held all the power. Even worse, every time I looked at him, I found him staring back. I felt a warm rush in my belly and tingles up my back. He was turning me on just standing there. He was turning me on. And that scared me. So the dare that he gives her now is to take her thong off and give it to him. Okay, let's take a knee. Take a knee with Nat. I want to say this book is like not terribly written. It's very readable. There's some cringy like cheese moments. I also don't love the age. I know she was adamant in the warning that everybody's over the age of 18, but it's been a year since they graduated. So they're like 19, maybe 20 if some of them have earlier birthdays. I don't know why this couldn't have been like a 5-year high school reunion. It's probably me and the fact that I'm like deep in my 30s, but I don't really get all hot and bothered by teenagers getting railed. Glad they're legally of age and the same age. That's more than what we usually get, but it's still like, why do they have to be 19? Like, did they have to be? So yeah, she does. She takes her thong off and gives it to him, and we know, and she knows, that it's like dripping, soaking. So that's not awkward. Someone howled their approval. Phones were out recording. This would be all over social media in the morning, but I had to put on my best sarcastic smile and twirled my panties around my finger. Are these what you want, Manson? She talks a few times about having a reputation that she needs to keep up for something. And like I said, I don't really know what her reputation is. Like, how does this go to, what is it? Is your reputation just never backing down from anything and being like a little slutty? I'm fine with it if that's what it is. She's still getting damper by the second because all of this is stuff that she's really enjoying. Manson notices that her underwear is damp. She expects him to fully put her on blast, but he doesn't. He just pockets them and puts like a little bit of the laces sticking out of his pocket, and they continue the game. And I just want to, pose a little thought here. I understand that she's damp and for very specific reasons, but discharge is also a thing. We've talked about this before. So like, even if she weren't and her underwear was wet, it doesn't necessarily mean that she's aroused. It just means that she has discharge. But we know that she's actually really riled up. So that's, I don't know. I don't know if that's anything. I just wanted to say it. So they continue the game, and it's another dare for Jess. What he does ask for is for her to take her next shot with her thong in her mouth. I imagine stuffing my own panties into my mouth at his command, then stand there drooling and gagged in front of everyone. I squeezed my legs together tighter. Maybe I was only paranoid, but I was certain that Manson could tell that he was turning me on. There was a little too much humor in his crooked smile. Jess, honey, there is a dark well inside of you that is being activated tonight. So that is very excited. Ashley is still watching from the sidelines in horror at what her friend is up to. So she doesn't take that dare, and they keep playing, and then it's his turn to have a dare, and she gives him, in my opinion, a softball of a dare. Just give me my thong back. And he drinks instead because he wants to keep it. I can't take this. The tension that's being built here is light years above the dumb shit that we usually get. It is what it is, but it's not terrible. It's not the worst thing I've read. Isn't that something? As I said, a little bit of her thong is peeking out of his pocket. So on the last round where she stands to win or lose, he's like messing with it and playing with the lace of the whole thing and distracting her, so she misses the cup and she loses. She starts to walk off, but he calls her back and he's like, you still have one dare cup on the table. You have one more dare left for me to give you. And he gives her an opportunity to win. He changes the rules a little bit. If you make it, you win instantly. But if you don't and you lose, you have to be my slave for the rest of the night. I bet she loses this shit on purpose. My heart was pounding and I masked how intrigued I was with anger. What the is that supposed to mean? Your slave? You do whatever I order you to do for the rest of the night or until you go home. Any and every order, you do it. No avoiding me. If you agree, you stick by my side. Cam and his stupid dare. Fuck this crowd and how invested they are in seeing me brought down, and fuck my vagina for betraying me every step of the way and making me all over this. I had to refuse. She doesn't though. She does try to make the shot, but in her head there's this little voice that's like, throw the game. Throw it all the way across the yard. Don't even try to make it. You know you want to be his slave. Her inner goddess is singing. She makes the throw. It lands in the grass. She has lost. Manson asks her softly, how does it feel to be a loser? And she is just shook at how much she is enjoying it altogether. Okay, so part 2 is the dare. We've reached part 2. Manson is like, are you actually doing this? And she's like, I'm not afraid of you, Manson. I'm taking the dare. I'm staying. And he's like, seriously? You're going to do everything I say for the rest of the night? And she's like, yeah, what, unless you were like bluffing or you can't handle it. And he's like, no, I can handle you. I'm just not sure you can handle me. And honestly, me neither. I don't know if she knows what's coming for her because one of the parts of this book is labeled the clowns. But yeah, they are doing this. That is what's going on. And you know what's so funny about this is that even if it's full of cheese, even if they're 19 years old, even if it's a dumb little setup of a game at a high school graduation, post-graduation party on Halloween with the populars, this is consent. It's wild to see because we never get it. But this is consent because every single thing that's happened this far, she didn't have to do. He didn't force her to do any of this. She could have dipped at any time. I know it would have damaged her reputation, but I still don't really know what her big reputation is. And even now, he said the terms of this is like, you have to do what I say for the rest of the night until you leave the party. She could literally leave right now. She could have said no. She doesn't have to do any of this, but she's choosing to do it, and that is consent. Winning. We're winning today. So anyway, they have that little moment, and he's like, follow me. But Ashley pulls her to the side real quick because she's like still just horrified at this whole thing. She's like, are you actually doing this? And she's like, no, I'm not bailing. And she's like, you're not bailing? What the heck do you mean? And then Manson's like, Jessica, come here now. She's damp. Of course she is. She's loving this. Ashley is proper horrified, but also supportive, which is what we want in our friends. Do a little vibe check with us to make sure this is actually what we want. And judge us from over there, but ultimately let us do what we want and then support us through it when if it goes badly. That's what a good friend does. Points for the friendship in this book. So she's like giddy because he called her over, but she doesn't want to seem like she's having too much fun with it. So she kind of slowly walks over and she's like, yeah. And he's like, my shoelace. Tie it. She's like, your shoelace? Really?
What are you, 5?
Literally, that's what she says. And he says, being a brat doesn't change that you're obeying me, Jess, he said, leaning down, bringing his face close to mine. Acting like this is such a goddamn chore for you doesn't change the fact that you're still doing it. He smiled wickedly. Pretending like you don't like this won't make it go away. Keep it up and you'll only manage to earn yourself a good old-fashioned attitude of Judge Smith. Why am I having fun? Why am I having fun? I hate it when I'm having fun. Okay, so she's like, what does that mean? He's like, keep it up and you'll find out. Also, you need to refer to me as master from now on. Curiosity made me want to push him. How hard could I shove before he cracked? Anyway, Ashley shows back up. She's like, I'm gonna fight him. And she's like, no. Because she knows Ashley will actually like fight him. But then Ashley's turned. So she's like, are you enjoying this? No shade if you are. I'm not gonna cock block you. Just let me know. So she says, she's like, you know what? Do you? I'm just gonna be around. So if you need me, text me. And this is a good friend. She goes back to Manson's side and she has a drink, but he takes it from her. He's like, I think you're done with that. And she's like, what are you trying to do? Ruin my entire night? And he's like, I don't want you drunk for this. And you know, if we hadn't been engaging in consensual exchanges of power up until this point, I would be a little annoyed that he took her drink from her because we're so used to seeing like just literal abuse in these books, but that's not what's going on here. They're about to enter into a consensual, very, very kinky night, and he wants her to not be inebriated during it, which seems responsible. And she has already relinquished control over to him multiple times at this point. So I'm not as bothered by this. You see how you can actually write dark, really twisted, kinky little things without them being just literal crimes against women? Very demure, very mindful. Kiss my boots. So the next little task that he gives her is to go get him a beer. Seems simple enough, right? Yeah. Jessica. What, Manson? Crawl. I blinked rapidly. I'm sorry. I must have misheard you. What? A slow, pleased smile spread across his face. You heard me just fine, Jess. Crawl. Crawl into the kitchen, get my beer, and crawl back. And remember your goddamn manners. You're right. Yes, sir. I don't know what I was thinking. Shut up! Stop looking at me! I marched back at him and jabbed my finger in his chest, his hard, surprisingly muscular chest. You are crazy if you think I'm gonna crawl through this goddamn party to get you a goddamn beer in front of all these goddamn people. He caught my wrist. Oh God. Stopping my angry jabbing. Now, Jessica. You're just making a scene. You're making even more people watch you. You're making it so much worse for when you do eventually obey. I'm not going to obey you, asshole. Then why are you still here? That's a good question, Manson. Why is she still here? Then we get more open-ended, like, opportunities for her to leave should she choose. I can't force you to do anything, Jess. You can easily walk away, especially since you seem to be so angry about these orders. But you're not walking away. You're standing here, arguing with me, throwing a tantrum, not a tantrum, trying to make me change my mind and take back my order. He shrugged, a laugh in his eyes that didn't pass his lips. I'm not taking it back. You're gonna do it, Jess. You're gonna obey because you want to, no matter how hard you try to hide it. You know, she hates him in this moment, but not for all the orders that he's giving. She hates him because he just gets her. He reads her so well. And she lets her mind wander to some darker places too, like them making out and her crawling to him and all this other stuff, blah, 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 blah. So he gets up real close to her ear and is like, go get me my beer and crawl to me before I throw you up against this wall and spank your cute little ass until you learn how to behave. Something was growing inside me, a frightening and unexpected thing. It was tight, knotted pleasure. It was joy at being put in my place, so sudden, so violently strong that I wanted to moan. Calm down, breathe. All of my struggling was absolutely useless, and the realization that he wholeheartedly meant that threat makes my hands shake with excitement. Oh my God. We love when someone is coming into their own when it comes to their sexual proclivities. Consensually, and not being to the point of submission and then just being like, well, I guess he's hot, so I wonder what his favorite color is. I'm not that stupid and neither are you. Get up. So she does. She drops to her knees, gets on all fours, crawls across the party, tapping people's legs to move them out of the way. And she's like, if they look close enough, they'll get a peek of my feet too because I'm not wearing any underwear. I don't think they'll need to look too closely for that. From the way you described your costume at the beginning of this is barely covering your ass as it is. So you being on all fours in motion, moving, that skirt is riding up. Your whole snatch is out, I guarantee. As she's crawling, she is thinking to herself that she kind of wants to see what a punishment would look like, right? So she gets over there, she gets the beer. She's having trouble figuring out how she's supposed to carry it back, like stuff it in her bra, carry it in her mouth. And then finally she's just like, F this, and stands up and pops the top and takes a drink herself. And she knows that he's going to punish her for this, but she's kind of thrilled about it. And then she has that voice come into her head again. She's like, you know, you like this. Just stop pretending, blah, blah, blah. No, no, no. Stop. Bad thoughts. Bad thoughts. I'd start dripping again if I wasn't careful. I just need to say real quick, your box is not a faucet. Like, I understand the physiological aspects of all of this, the biological way that things work, right? Arousal, stimulation elicits dampness and also like a swelling of certain areas. I understand how it all works, right? But you're not like just like like a rushing river. I understand that it's hyperbole, it's metaphor, it's simile. I got that. However, ease off the gas a little bit because it's not that damp. But maybe it is. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe she got that wop. Walking back to Manson on my own 2 feet instead of crawling felt much naughtier than it should have. He was right where I'd left him. Laughing over something a girl with dyed blue hair had said to him. She was pretty, shorter than me, but gorgeously curvy, ripped fishnets beneath her gray plaid skirt. Her practically bursting out of her tight white blouse. A surprising pang of jealousy shot through me, even though she walked away as I approached. You know what? We've reached another thing in this book that I don't hate. She noticed that he was talking to another girl who probably looks more categorically his type. She got blue hair, fishnets, whatever. He had a mohawk in high school. He's wearing a harness, for Christ's sake. It is a Halloween party, so I'm not sure what he is supposed to be dressed as. She says that earlier too. She's like, he looks like he's out of Hellraiser. That would only make me want him more, but that's just me. But she sees him laughing at something that a girl said. Not only is she not threatened by this, but she does register that she herself is feeling jealous. And she does this without talking shit about this girl. She doesn't put the girl down to make herself feel better. She recognizes that the jealousy is a call coming from inside the house. We don't have to demean other women to make ourselves feel better. What a revolution. So she gets back over there. The girl with the blue hair leaves and he's like, I thought I gave you an order. And she's like, oh, I forgot about the crawling thing. And I guess I forgot about the no more drinking thing too. Oopsie. And he's like, you will be dealt with. This bratty behavior over every little order can't continue. Trust me, it's funny as hell to watch you struggle with yourself and try to save your pride by cursing and acting angry. But he shrugged. But it really defeats the purpose of the game. I need to see better obedience for you. And well, I think there's only one way to get it. And she starts to apologize because she's like, this is just weird. Doing all of this is weird. He's like, but you're doing it willingly, consensually. He's like, I need you to be a good girl for me, a good, obedient girl. And I know that you want to be good for me, Jess, but I might have to punish you to get you there. And she's like, am I really going to let this freak show punish me? And he's like, I know that you will, because it's carefully curated as your reputation seems to be. And I still don't understand. Like, you just crawled commando across a kitchen floor. I think that the carefully curated reputation seems to be dwindling at this moment. So anyway, he's like, you need to be punished. And she's like, no, I don't. And he's like, yeah, that's exactly what you need. And you're going to follow me and you're going to accept your punishment willingly. He turns and walks away. And wouldn't you know it, she follows him. They end up in what appears to be a cinema room, which is playing an 80s horror movie. And I am having PTSD flashbacks to Haunting Adeline, but thankfully, there's yet to be any crimes committed in this book. No QAnon in sight, hasn't been anti-Semitic in any kind of a way. So I'm trying to remind myself continuously that this is not that. We're safe here. We're moderately safe here. So he goes and he sits on the couch and she starts to sit with him and he stops her saying, quote, good slaves don't sit on the furniture, Jessica, he said as I turned away from the TV and toward him. There's still a smile lurking behind his serious expression. He was enjoying every second of humiliating me. I didn't blame him. How many times had he fantasized about degrading the bitchy cheerleader who made fun of his clothes and started rumors about his friends being Satanists? Even Ashley didn't know that the source of most of the sordid gossip about Manson and his friends came straight from my lips. Anything it took to keep him down, anything to win the sick game I'd started where I made all the rules and changed them at my whim. But he was right. The rules had changed, and I was losing my own game. I mustered up my trembling, shrinking pride. Where the hell do you expect me to sit then? On the floor, on your knees, at my feet, like a good girl. Oh, he asked her if he should make her kiss his boots again. And she's like, please don't. Begging already, Jess. My God, calm down, guys, please. I will say too, I've been on Tumblr for a long time and I've had a lot of relationships in my life. At 19, this is fairly advanced for 19-year-olds. Maybe they're built different these days, but we didn't know this much about safely exploring kink when we were 19. That it's just not, which is another reason, like, why couldn't this have been a 5-year reunion and we didn't have to deal with teenagers? Such a silly girl. Why are you down there on your knees begging for me not to order you to embarrass yourself? I don't know, I said softly, but I did know. I was understanding it more and more with every order, with every condescending glance and mocking word. I liked feeling as if I had no choice. I liked that I had an excuse to let go of my pride and to do the filthy, degrading things that made my belly light and my clench. Not a clench. I couldn't resist diving deeper. I couldn't resist getting more of that feeling. So the strange thing about this whole thing, and I guess I should get my serious cap. Serious cap, let's talk about kink, okay? Let's talk about trust and building trust when you're exploring kink. So when you're exploring kink with somebody, it's important to have a solid base of trust going in. Aside from like her warning him that Captain Kyle was coming to jump him with his friends and stuff, I don't really know where trust is being built aside from this exact night, where he's allowing her like ways of leaving, options to like dip out, and giving her those opportunities to stop any of this should she wish to stop it. And so every single time that you do that properly in a kinky kind of scene that you're doing, it does build trust with the other person, because the dom sub dynamic is a power exchange at its core, and usually all of the power is placed on the sub. The sub is the one who has the power to say the safe word, to say no, to stop everything as soon as they're uncomfortable. And in exchange for that absolute power, they give the illusion of power to the dominant so that they can make them do things against their will, but they're consensually, inviting them into this whole exchange. So I just thought it would be nice to put that here as a reminder that we're about to enter into a BDSM slave master dom sub kind of dynamic, and in order to do that safely, trust needs to be established. And over the few first little chunks of this book, little bitty nuggets of trust are being exchanged with these people, and so I feel pretty good going into this. How are you feeling? Yeah, okay, great. I'm gonna take this off and we'll just keep going. So he does make her kiss his boots again. Apparently there's a lot of that going on in here. The idea of breaking down in tears in front of him sounded delicious. The idea of crying, begging, sobbing uncontrollably only to have him give in and accept it in the end. I wanted to imagine he was forcing me. I wanted to imagine there would be dire consequences for refusal instead of none at all. I wanted to imagine I hated him just like I always insisted that I did. So there's a lot of turmoil brewing inside our old girl Jessica here. She hated him in high school, but did she really? She acts like she hates all of this, but why does she love it so much? And it's just a really nice moment that I hope everybody gets to experience at least once with something. It doesn't have to necessarily be putting your mouth on someone's boots. What the hell was wrong with me? Since when did something like boots turn me on? It had never crossed my mind, never worked its way into my fantasy I'd touched myself to. I pressed my lips to the leather, lingering there now that I no longer had the eyes of a crowd on me. While she's down there, she feels a weight on her head and knows that he is putting his other foot on her head and gently pushing it down into his boot, and he requests that she lick them clean. I die. This is, oh boy. So she starts licking and kissing the boot, living with every single moment, and then he orders her to sit up. So she does, and he asks her if she's thirsty, and then has her open her mouth, and then he drinks some beer and spits it into her mouth. I'm unwell. He's like, if you were this obedient the whole time, I wouldn't have to punish you in such a way. If this is punishment, I would like to, nothing. During all of this, she asks him for her thong back, and he's like, I don't know. And she's like, please. And he's like, I'm going to need a reason. And then she gives him a reason that she's that she's worried she's going to leave like wet spots everywhere. And all of this is so humiliating, but she's loving it. So instead of giving her thong back after this revelation that she shared with him, he just pats his lap and asks the poor little angel to come sit on his lap. So she does. She gets up, she goes to sit on his lap, and she is just freaking out the entire time at the possibilities. Like, what's he going to make me do? Am I going to cry? Is he going to make me cry and beg and plead and all this other stuff? And she's loving the thoughts of this. And what he does instead is run some stuff by her just to further establish more trust. I swear to God, I am so thrilled with this. His hands gripped my hips, and he leaned forward, pressed against my back, and said softly in my ear, do you understand what a safe word is? I gulped. Yes. Yours is red. Call it if you need to, although now that I'm seeing how much of a little masochist you are, I don't think you'll be calling it. You know what you deserve. Oh my I am not well. I didn't expect to have such a fun time. They're doing so well. Ugh. It's not hard. 144 pages. It's not hard. No. She's growing wetter by the moment, and she's worried that she's going to leave a wet spot on his pants. So she says, quote, I tried to squeeze my legs together, but it didn't make a difference since I was straddling his lap. As I moved, I felt a hardness in his crotch and froze. Okay, so we're going to table the crotch thing for a second. You can squeeze your legs together if you're straddling something. I mean, that's how people stay on top of bucking wild horses, right? They squeeze their legs together and stay on top of the horse. But if your goal is to squeeze your legs together so that they are together so that you don't drip everywhere and you're straddling someone, of course it wouldn't work. But I'm just being nitpicky at this point. I have to be because everything else is going so well. He calls her a bad girl and says that she needs to be punished. And I'm honestly sweating a little bit over what this is going to be. Like, what are we about to do? I am nervous. I am nerves. She starts to try to grind up on him, and he stops her, he grabs her hair, and whispers into her ear, you really think that's what you deserve right now? He pulled me back, his mouth close to my ear, and he whispered, you deserve to have your aching all night. You deserve to have duct tape slapped over it so you can't touch while I crush your pretty little under my boot. The boots are a main character. She's like, wow, that's hot, and I shouldn't be turned on, but yet here I am. But he's like, we'll get to all of that. First, I want you to like put your head down on the ground. He's back here, right? She's sitting on top of him here. She has to like position her legs this way on him and put her head down on the ground. Ass all up in his face. And she's a wreck because she's like, he's going to see me, all of me, and also a little hot about it. Of course she is. She's loving this. He's like, oh my God, you're so damp. That's not how he said it, but I'm trying to say monetized here. So he's like perusing the wares, and like touching, and she's living. She's just dying for it. She's like what you see, Manson. And so he just smacks the shit out of her. Pop! He's like, I like it a lot better now. Your is cuter when your ass is red. Funny how that works, isn't it? I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know anything about that, sir. I'm gonna have to take your word for it. I am stunned. Okay, so he spanks her, right? And she's like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. That's all my fucks. I can't say anymore. He's like, what? You don't want me to punish you? The door is right there and you can leave. If you really don't want this, say so right now. You're safe to do that. I promise. That's it. It's it. It's not even hard. And she says, I want it. My voice cracked, but I had to be honest. I had to tell him the truth. I'll use my safe word if I need to, but I want it. I'm not even into degradation. I'm not into boot worship, not to get all personal on your ass. Those are not things that appeal to me. And yet I am enjoying this. This is fun. You know why? Because there's consent and no crime. Consent over crimes every single times. Anyway, they carry on. He spanks her like over 10 times, probably over 20 times. He says her ass would look so much cuter with bruises on it. And again, I'm going to have to take your word for it. As this pain starts spreading, so does her desire and her enjoyment of this. She's living. She's loving every second of this. And she starts apologizing. I'll do better. I promise. I'll be a good girl. I promise. I'm sorry, master. She's learning very quickly. A great student. Love it. So he also like has her face pushed down into the carpet with one of his boots. And then he's like, that sounds better. You should give my boots a kiss while you're down there and thank me for the discipline that I just gave you. God damn. I kissed one boot and then the other. More lip gloss prints on the shiny black leather. Manson helped me sit up slowly and eased me back onto his lap despite my ass stinging as it made contact with his jeans. I leaned back on his chest, hard and warm against my back. For a moment, all I wanted to do was lay there close to him, feel his heartbeat. His arms encircled me in an embrace, soothing but not demanding. When I settled into it with heavy trembling sigh, his hold tightened. Slowly, I drifted back to reality. The house around us felt real again. I could hear the bass thumping through the walls and the distant murmur of the crowd. Manson's fingers traced circles on my arms. Are you all right, Jess? I don't even... Okay. She's like, yeah, and I can't believe you actually, and he's like, I can't believe you let me. So they're both exploring this together consensually and surprised at how much they're enjoying it probably and how far it's going because that means that the other person is comfortable with letting it continue this way. It's not hard. It doesn't seem hard. It's right here. I mean, it's right here. I sat up enough so that I could look back at him. He wiped a rogue tear from my eye before it could fall, and I leaned into his hand. Manson Reed. Weirdo, freak show, Manson Reed. He made me feel safe and terrified, protected and brutalized all at once. But it wasn't only that. In that moment, I wanted nothing more than to get in his pants. Okay, so I'm loving this. He's checking in with her after. It's aftercare. It's consent. It's aftercare. It's communication. It's trust. And it's disgusting. It's absolutely filthy. Where am I? So anyway, he's checking in with her and he's like, are you going to be a good girl from now on? No sass. And she's like, I can't promise no sass, but I can promise to try. And he's like, it's been 2 minutes and you're back to your old ways. And she's like, well, it's hard for a bad girl to be good. She's a little minx. And she says, but you know what would help is if you just railed me real quick. Just real quick. It'll be real quick. And he's like, yeah, if and when I do you, I'm not going to be doing it quickly. I'm going to make you scream. And I believe him. Yeah, I believe him. And so does she. I could usually roll my eyes at boys' promises of overwhelming prowess, but from Manson, I believed him. I didn't dare doubt what he was capable of, and I wanted him even more. The desire was going to drive me crazy. How could I possibly manage to rejoin the party after this and behave normally? Just don't. Don't go back to the party. Stay in this room, lock the door, never leave. He says no to the invitation, and she asks again, and he's like very firm, when I say no, it means no. And she's like, yes, master, I understand. I did want to touch on the master-slave dynamic too, because in other books that are less responsibly done, when the word slave pops up, it has a different meaning to me. It feels different to me to read. But in a book like this, where the BDSM and the kinkier aspects are being clearly outlined and discussed beforehand, communication and trust is being had, all this other stuff, master and slave is a common dynamic in the BDSM community. And so it's less of a like red flag to see it here, because it makes sense for what's going on in the book, rather than somebody just tossing in the word slave to be edgy and doing none of the work to establish this kind of relationship to let us know what we're in for. So I did just want to say that, because I think in the past I have mentioned, like when I see the word slave pop up, I'm like, don't love that. But with the work and the care to build this relationship the way that they built it in this book, it's different. It feels different. It feels less like a threat and more like a role that they're playing, which is what they're doing. Anyway, he's like, I want you to be patient for me, and you're going to be. And she's like, that's not fair. And that does not go well with him. What do you mean it's not fair? I can do whatever I want. I can make you suffer all night and never give you release. I can spank you again just because I like hearing you scream, and you do sound pretty when you scream. You know, she's obviously a bratty little thing, and so she's going to push some limits some more. And she's like, well, I'll say my safe word then. And we have more firming up of the boundaries and what all these things mean. Your safe word means that this stops. That's what it's for. It's not a way to force me to do what you want. It's a way to keep you safe. Yeah, that's what it's for. And she wouldn't know that because she's never done anything like this before. So he explains it to her. Like, you're not allowed to threaten me with your safe word. That's not how a safe word works. The safe word is meant as an emergency stop button. If things get to be too much, if you're not having fun, if you're feeling uncomfortable, if it's all too overwhelming for you and you just need a break, you say the safe word and everything stops. No questions asked. So he explains that to her. And then she's like, you're so mean. And he's like, you have no idea. So they leave this room and head back to the party, and every single thing that she does for the rest of the night is just prolonging the torture that is wanting to rail him. And she's also without her underwear, and her ass hurts and all this other stuff, but she's loving every single second of this. As the night rolled on, kegs came out, clothes came off, everybody's in the pool. She says that her and Manson are noticeably the two most sober people at the party. Not that it matters, because everybody else is drunk, so they don't notice. She also noticed that everybody that he meets, like, he keeps stopping to have conversations with nearly everybody at the party, even people that they didn't go to high school. And not only does he know everybody seems to like him. They like light up when they see him. They're excited to talk to him and stuff. And she's just confused, really. And it makes her feel proud, because even though they're excited to see him, she's the one who's at his side, and she's the one who gets to have this part of him. And she's also the one that's just ready to grind all up on him. She is just ready to go. So as she's standing off to the side, she's getting a little chilly as the night air creeps in, and she's like holding herself as Manson's talking to other people. And then she looks over and she sees something that scares her to his side. Like, she just goes right to him, and he's like, what's wrong? And she's like, there's clowns here. Oh God, I'm not ready for this. 3 men were walking across the yard from the side gate, beers in hand, laughing and shoving one another. They wore matching black jumpsuits, and their faces had been painted pasty white with black shapes filled in around their eyes and their mouths, transforming their lips into wide jagged grins. They weren't your typical bright circus clowns. These were jesters from hell. Not jesters from hell. Even worse, I knew them. I knew them because, just like I had with Manson, I'd gladly spent my senior year tormenting them, watching Kyle push them around and flouting my untouchable status in front of them just to see the longing and frustration in their eyes. Vincent, Jason, and Lucas, Manson's best friends. No. Oh no. So not only did she torment all of these people a year ago, and pretty much the entire time they were in high school together, I guess, they're all here, and they're probably all hot, and they're all going to take turns railing her. And honestly, you know what? This doesn't necessarily do it for me, but I love this. I love this idea. I love this setup, this whole like bully dynamic, and then it changes. It's turned on its head, and it's turned into a master slave situation and a group scene. I swear to God, Good job. Good job, Harley. She wants to go back inside, of course, but Manson just walks over to him and starts having a conversation with all of them. And I'm sure that they are going to love being filled in on what's going on with Miss Prom Queen herself. They all start kind of like approaching her and circling like vultures. One of them's like, well, 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 if it isn't Miss blah, blah, blah.
Being surrounded by 3 men who surely hated me should have filled me with dread, but instead, intrusive fantasies of dropping to my knees for them kept prodding my brain.
Jessica, please! So they're like bantering or like picking on her a little bit. Like, where's Kyle? Oh, they didn't work out. How weird. Would have never guessed. Blah, blah, blah. And Manson's like, easy guys. She's with me tonight. And they're like, you're not gonna share? I bet you he does. Share. Oh my God. The idea of being shared by 4 of them, ordered around, degraded, punished, it made my stomach tighten, slowly strangled by a knot of tension and desire. The very men I'd tormented, I wanted. It was so fittingly humiliating, but God, that clown makeup gave me the creeps. Girl, I would never. There's a lot of things on the world that I would never do. You know, there's other things that I would, consider. Whatever. We're not going to get into it today. One of the things I would never do is a clown. Never, ever, ever. I don't like them. No. So they all keep like eyeing her. She's not used to being the one that was a target for people. And so she's like, is this poetic justice? Maybe, but it's also hot as fuck. And she's like, I'm not a piece of meat. And one of them, I think Vincent, was like, no, if you were, you'd be strung up from the ceiling. And I can certainly arrange that. Calm down, Vinny. Oh my God. And then they take turns like, like, oh, we don't bite. And somebody's like, stop lying. We do bite. We totally bite. Blah, blah, blah. And Manson's like, listen, keep going. Get whatever you need to do because it's going to be good training for her. She asks him again to go back inside. And he's like, why? So I can rail you finally? I'm making you wait. And she's like, I've waited long enough. And he's like, you're not addressing me properly. And we're not going back in. And they're all watching her, how she responds to this. And they're all just standing there watching her squirm. And she's like, I have to go to the bathroom. And she expects him to stop her, but he doesn't. And so she heads off to the bathroom so that she can rub one out because she can't take this any longer. He can continue to torture her or spank her or whatever, but she's got to get off. She's got to find an O for herself first. And as she's walking back in, she hears him be like, she's a bratty one, boys. Only one good way to deal with that, whatever. So she stands in line for the bathroom and she finally gets inside. But she goes in, she takes a gander at her backside and it's like all red. And she's dying and living for him to do it again. And so she starts to have a little moment. She's hitting the DJ booth and then there's some pounding on the door. And she's like, just a minute. And there's more pounding. And she's like, almost there, more pounding. So she's like, fine. She's got stuff all over her hands. And she opens the door and Manson just charges in. And he can tell what she was doing because, whatever. And he is mad. She's like, are you going to hurt me? And he's like, you can't even imagine how I'm going to hurt you. Do you remember your safe word? I don't. I forgot. It's red. I'm just kidding. She confirms that she remembers it. And he says, if I cross a line, you better damn well use it. Firming up those limits one more time. So anyway, he's like, I'm going to punish you. And she's like, I just want you to do me. I'm like so ready and you're making me wait. It's torturous. And he's like, yeah, well, you don't get to tell me what to do. I'm telling you what to do. So he takes her underwear out of his pocket and gives them back to her. And he's like, if you had just put these in your mouth before, this all could have been a little differently, but I still really want to see them in your mouth. So he shoves her underwear into her mouth. He has her like put her hands on the wall, underwear in her mouth. He wants to see all of her. He tells her to spread. The word labia is used. I'm stunned. He says some stuff about how, I always wanted you, Jess, and you knew that. I wanted to touch you all through high school. Never did. Didn't even bother to look at you. So you're insane if you think I'm just going to give in so easily to you and your wants. No, that's not how this is going to go. And he sees her red ass and he's like, I wish I had my paddle. And to herself, she's like, he owns a paddle. He's such a freak. And I love it. The underwear is in her mouth and she mentions that she could easily spit it out if she wants to, but she keeps it in place and she ends up starting to drool because that's what happens when there's something in your mouth for a long time. So she's standing there spread all out and holding her underwear in her mouth, right? And he's trying to reason like where all this is coming from. Has it been a long time since you've gotten off? Or is all of this just making you so hot that you can't stand it? So then he instructs her to look at him and then tells her to insert one finger pop slowly. So he talks her through this whole thing. Of course he does. And he stops her just before she reaches the finish line. Darn him all the way to heck. She's very frustrated, but he's tickled because he's like, you'd still rather obey me than do what you want because you want to obey me more than you want to be satisfied. That's interesting. You're a lot more fun than I thought you would be. So he sucks her finger into his mouth and licks it clean. We're doing a lot of licking things clean tonight. And then he backs up and she's like, Kiss me. So he does. Hand on her throat and everything. We're having fun. She draws blood, like kissing him and scratching his neck and stuff. And he's like, you made me bleed. And she's like, you didn't make me bleed. And he's like, is that a problem? And she's like, yeah, I thought you were going to make me cry. And he's like, is that what you want? She thinks to herself, yes. But what she says is, I want to slap you. And he's like, do it and see what happens. Boom. So she does. She slaps him. I am done. He didn't need to tell me twice. The sound of my palm striking his face was so loud that I wouldn't have been surprised if I heard it outside over the music. I'd put my strength into it. All my confusion over how turned on I was by him. He barely even flinched. Instead, he said softly, now I have to make you cry, Jessica. Go now! What are we doing? Am I going to read this whole series? They emerge from the bathroom holding hands tightly, and he's like, upstairs. He orders her upstairs. Yes, sir. He directs her to a room at the end of the hallway, and it is illuminated by this orange flickering candlelight. And he's like, yeah, orange. Miss Peters says that it'll help with my anxiety or whatever. And she's like, is this your room? And he's like, yeah, I live here. Nobody will bother us. Apparently, Mrs. Peters is a social worker, was his social worker, and as much as his mom wanted to keep him, she wanted to keep her dusty boyfriend around more. So he was displaced, and he ended up living here in their house after he turned 18, I guess. Yeah, everybody in town knew that his dad was abusive and he used to show up with bruises and stuff. And she starts to apologize. He's like, I don't want to talk about it. Maybe someday, but just not right now. And I think that that's another example of the responsibility that is shown in this book, this tiny little book that I expected literally nothing from. Because in the middle of a very intense BDSM kink scene that's playing out, it's just a very vulnerable time for both people or all the people involved. And so it's nice to see that the dominant, the person who is in charge of the whole thing and keeping it safe and all that stuff, understands that this might not be the best time to have a genuine conversation about something that bothers him. That maybe in the future, he says maybe in the future, maybe someday we can talk about it if you actually want to hear about it. But like in this moment where everything is really heightened, all of our emotions are really way up there, and we're entangled in this whole like back and forth thing that we're doing, this isn't the time that I'm comfortable talking about it. He's setting a boundary, and she gives him a smile. She says someday. It's like a genuine exchange between them, and then they're back in. Someday, he repeated. You mean I'm not scaring you away? You are scaring me. I reached up on my toes, and the kiss was chaste, but this time an assurance instead of a demand. But I like being scared. And then he starts being like, you were with the wrong people in high school. You would fit right in with us, with all this weird stuff that you're into. And she's like, you were supposed to make me cry. Can we focus? Can we keep on track here? And then he's like, all I'm saying is that you would have fit in with my friends. I saw the way you were looking at them earlier. Oh my gosh. Just then there's a noise in the room. It sounds like somebody else is in there, and then they hear laughing. The 3 freaking clown guys are in the room. They were up there waiting on them. Okay, so the clowns are in here, and I didn't do a script for this part of the book. So I'm excited to see if the group scene is properly communicated before it happens, because this is a very slippery slope. These 3 men are here. They're wandering around her like vultures. They're talking about how it's nice to be on the receiving end of the scared looks instead of being the ones who were looking afraid at her, because she walked her snotty ass around that school like she owned the place, and they were always just right beneath her. So it's a nice change of pace for her to now be looking at them with fear in her eyes. And so this very much could veer into a crime if not done properly, because she didn't know that they were in that room. Yes, up until this point, he has been very communicative with like, you need to say your safe word. That's what stops everything, blah, blah, blah. But he's also been very good at outlining what they're going to do before they do it. So I'm excited to see if that happens here. Fingers crossed, because I would hate to lose momentum. So Manson does affirm up this whole thing. He's like, do you want to leave, or do you want to face your fear and be a good girl for me? You wanted to dance with the devil, Jess. Well, now you have 4. He kissed my forehead and said, if there's a doubt in your mind, if it's too much, they all know your safe word. I wouldn't let a soul touch you that wouldn't respect it if you wanted the game to stop. Got it? She nodded. Got it. Be a good angel then. Crawl over to them and offer them your mouth. We're doing great. We're doing great. We're setting the scene up with boundaries, limits, safe word recognition in place, reminders of like, you can stop this at any time, but if you want to do this, here we go. It's not difficult, people. Please. So they put some handcuffs on her because one of them likes restraints, and she's fine with that too. They made sure. She's supposed to offer her mouth to them, and Manson, I think it was Manson. Yeah. Manson's like sitting over watching all this unfold, and then he comes over to let her know that if her mouth is occupied, give 3 taps on their leg and everything will stop. And this is another thing that I don't think most people think of when a safe word is implemented into into the game, and then your mouth might not be able to form the word at some point. So you want to have options of saying and communicating that you want something to stop if the situation requires it. And we have that here. Wow, wow, wow. So she services all three of the clowns, and they all like take turns like stimulating her as well, like looking at her and lifting her skirt up and everything. And Manson's there watching, make sure everything's okay, and communicating with them like she's not allowed to arrive at her destination. So they keep her from doing that. And they all have a really good time. And then she asks Manson when he shows up, like leering over her, if she's doing a good job. And he's like, you're doing such a good job. I actually have a surprise for you. You asked me if I still carry these things around. Oh no, we have a knife. So he whips out this butterfly knife and flops it around. It's like one of those. And he's like, this takes a lot of practice to learn how to do. And I always keep it sharp. Do you want to play with this, Angel? And she's like, yes, please. And he's like, do you trust me? I do. I do. I don't know what that's worth, but I do. She says, yes, master. I won't hurt you, Angel, he said. I only want to remind you who's in charge. I only want to remind you to keep being a good girl. My eyes flickered to Vincent, who nodded sagely at Manson's words. Be a good girl for Daddy Manson, Jess, he said, in his a tease in his voice. I'm sure he's already shown you what happens to bad girls, hasn't he? Now she has to make Vincent feel good, and he will reward her, right? That's the setup. I never thought I could experience so much pleasure from just words, so much ecstasy from fear. I looked up at Vincent, the kid Kyle used to blackmail for Adderall, who'd spent every day of high school out of his mind because otherwise his anxiety wouldn't let him function. He looked sober now and calm, but he still had his Joker's smile. She says, please use me. Girl, get up. No, don't. You're having a good time and everything's safe and you're fine. So just have at it. Good for you. When she finishes Vincent, or he crosses the finish line all over her, she thanks him. And then Manson grabs her and kisses her very intimately and then says to the clowns to leave them. Now it's time for them to be alone. Now we move on to part 4, which is called The Knife. Manson lifted me from the floor, cradling me like a baby. He carried me to the bed and laid me on the smooth black sheets. Yes, of course. Cool against my back. He crawled over me, arms and legs straddling me like a beast over his prey, and leaned down to kiss me again. He was ravenous now, hurried, as if he'd suddenly lost that careful, patient control. He pushed my head back so my throat was exposed and moved down to brush his lips against my neck. He nipped at me between kisses, and the nips became bites, as if he was going to eat me alive. My hands were still cuffed, and I desperately wanted to touch, hold him, scratch him. I wanted to make him bleed again. They are having fun, and I am here thrilled for that. She's like begging him for, release. He's like, you'll get your reward painfully, slowly, soon. I promise. And then he leaves her for a minute and he comes back and he has the little knife and he's flipping it all around because he's super impressive. He's like looming over her now with the knife and he relives that moment where the guys were like, he tried to kill us. I didn't try to kill them. I don't like to hurt people. Not like that anyway. And he puts the knife on her cheek and traces it slowly down. And then she's just like raring to go. And he loves it. Of course he does. And so he puts his knee up against, the stuff and she starts just grinding on it. And he's like, you're pretty needy. Yeah, that makes sense actually. He asks her one more time if she remembers her safe word. Listen, objectively speaking, because like I said, I'm not really into any of this stuff. None of this stuff is like what gets me going. We're not talking about what does. However, objectively, I can tell you that even if you like just from a distance find this stuff the least bit intriguing, or even if not necessarily, this is a good time. This is fun. It's sexy. I don't even know what to do with myself. And it's consensual. There are boundaries discussed. There are lines drawn. There is communication and trust. And you can actually have all of those things together and still be dark and doing dark things. I'm pretty sure she's about to get railed by this knife, okay? That's pretty dark, but it's consensual. She's doing it willingly. You can have it all. So she confirms that she does remember the safe word. Suddenly, the knife was no longer pressed to my throat. His hand detangled from my hair and wrapped around my neck, squeezing. The sensation of struggling to breathe sent chills of pleasure through me, and I pulled against my handcuffs, the metal biting into my skin. She, takes her handcuffed hands and starts trying to, have a little moment with herself, and he is like, oh, we can't have that. So he takes the handcuffs, unlocks one of them, and then loops it around the bed frame so she can't move her hands anymore. Ugh. She's like, no, please. And he's like, I told you I was going to make you cry, so get ready. To hear this girl that tortured him all through school begging for him to give her the slightest bit of release is like music to his ears. So he lingers a little bit longer, reaches over to the bedside table, grabs a candle, gulp. I'm going to spread you apart, hold you open, and let this drip right onto your
said she wanted so badly. I shuddered, whimpering at the thought, and he smiled sympathetically. I don't blame you. I know it's going to be hard when you want it so badly, but you need to be a good girl. And she says, yes, master. Please know, if you're doing wax play, there are specific special candles that are made for this, that where the wax melts at a lower temperature so it's not so hot, so you don't accidentally get like second-degree burns from this like little romp you're wanting to do. So be sure to look out for those. Just be safe, just trying to help you stay safe. He drops some of the wax on her. It's really hot, searing, and then all of a sudden it's gone, and so it's like a pain pleasure mixture. He drops more on her. She's living, he's living, I'm living, you're living, we're living. And he's like, no more touching without permission. Fine, see, at ease. I got it. I understand the rules. He starts to, and he's like, does this feel good? And she's like, yes, please, God. And then he stops. Anyway, she starts cussing at him again, and he's like, you know what happens when you cuss at me? You're going to get a spanking again, which I'm sure she's thrilled for. All of this is that there's no loss in sight. It's a win-win situation. He's holding her open, and she realizes that he's not about to just spank her ass. He's about to spank something else. I don't think I can take it. If it's a limit for you, I won't do it, he said firmly. The fog of my pleasure headspace cleared for a moment, allowing me to see the clarity of reality. I wasn't truly at his mercy. I could stop him. A single word could put an end to it. Once again, we have the lines and the limits being discussed before anything crazy happens. Go! I thought for a moment as he waited for my answer. As scared as I was, I wanted to try it. I wanted to experience this every terrifying second. I wanted to see how far I could push the affinity for pain. Just knowing what he intended to do was bringing a new rush of excitement over me. I took a deep breath and said, do it. I remember my safe word. I'll say it if I need to. His fingers beneath my chin locked my gaze to his. You can change your mind if it's too much. Is this it? Is this the man for me? I mean, he's 19, so surely not, but we're getting close. You can change your mind if it's too much, whether that's now or 5 minutes from now or 10. Got it? And she nods. Good job, Harley LaRoux. You make it look easy breezy. And clearly, from all of the books that I've reviewed on this channel, it's not. So he starts popping her, and she is thrilled and hurt and loving it and crying and thrilled again. It's full circle. She's loving every minute of it, dog. Okay, so she's crying in the midst of all this, so he stops to check in with her again, and he's like, are you okay? And she's like, yes, I'm good. I need, and he's like, you've been punished. Are you ready for release? Do you think you deserve to arrive? And she says, only if you think I deserve it. I'm your slave, right? So I do what you say. I met his eyes with my tearful ones, giggling a little at the sheer overwhelming sensation of it all. Only if you want me to come. We've done it. We've done it. We've gotten her where we needed to go. He's like, you're such a good girl. I'm like, I know. No, he like hovers above her, and is like, say please. And she does. And he just goes diving right on in. Nice. So she does arrive at this with the help of some appendages as well. And she's like, oh my God, that was, what? And he's like, you're not done yet. Oh no. So next up, he like holds the knife and makes her do the handle, which I don't really understand. Maybe I don't have enough knowledge about knives in general, but it seems to me, especially a butterfly knife, I think those are sharp on both ends. So if you're holding the blade, it's going to cut. I don't understand this. I really don't understand this. How are you not getting cut? I don't understand, but whatever. I'm not willing to stay here all night. So she's being probed by it. It's inside, it's inserted, right? And she's having such a good time that this time when she arrives, she, even squirting for me? What a good girl. That's beautiful. I haven't seen squirting show up. This is new also. This is like a brand new world for me. We haven't had that before. So she arrives, she's spraying everywhere, and he's excited, and she's like, I love that. Thank you. I feel so good. And he's not even done. So he disrobes and enters her. Fine. It was good. It was great. They've been waiting for it. Sploosh. We lay across from each other on the bed, arms tangled together, facing each other. He turned on the lights, helped me clean up, and pulled the wet comforter off his bed so we could lay on the cool sheet. He asks her, they lay there looking at each other for a while, and he's like, do you want to go back downstairs? And she's like, do you? And he's like, I'm worried this will break whatever twilight zone we've wandered into, so I'm good to stay here. And she's like, cool, let's just stay here. Moments of easy silence passed as I closed my eyes again. Then his voice softly said, was that good for you? I opened my eyes again, surprised at his careful, concerned tone likely obvious on my face. If the screaming didn't convince you. He chuckled as he leaned closer. His kiss was tender, the crown jewel on his sadism. How could a man be so carefully cruel and so brutally gentle? Then can we do it again? Absolutely. So in epilogue, we have a little short one. The next morning has arrived and she comes downstairs and Daniel is down there and he's like, oh my God. And they're like, calm down. Easy, buddy. And he's like, I just can't even believe it. Ashley is still there. She's clinging onto the toilet. She had a little too much to drink. But I forgot this whole time that Jess was her ride. So I guess she didn't have anywhere to go. Poor Ashley. And so they start to head to the car and Ashley's like, you know, wary of Manson and all that. But Jess is like, she'll warm up eventually. Do you want to come with us? Are you sure you don't want to come with us? And he's like, no, I got to help with the cleanup, but breakfast another time sounds good. She's like, cool. And he's like, be good. And she's like, I don't know about that. And she says, bye, loser. And he's like, And she's like, I'm sorry, you can punish me for that another time. Bye, master. The end. And there's a note from the author. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this story, dear reader. I can't thank you enough for choosing to pick up my work. If you enjoyed it, please leave a short or long review. An indie writer such as myself is always honored to know when my writing has brought you happiness. Until next time, Harley. Harley, I'm gonna leave you a review. Sensational. I love this. This was so much fun. It was so responsible and well done and well communicated, but it was still freaky as heck. Oh my God. Like, obviously it's a novella. There's only so much we can do, but we got knife play. We got a group scene. We got a little revenge plot from the weirdos from school getting to rail their bully and the popular girl, and she awakened some stuff in herself. We have like a little teasing of maybe they're going to continue to do this, or maybe a relationship will come about. I don't know. And all of it was done with consent. Oh my God. What do you mean? Yeah, 4 stars. I'm a little upset that I liked it as much as I did. And there were some stuff, like he kept going, Jess. Like that was a little annoying. What was the other thing that bugged me? Like, you know, just a little, like, whatever. I don't love that they're 19. You know, a few little complaints there, but like skyscrapers above what we've seen and become used to on this channel. So good job. Really recommend this. I think I'm gonna read the rest of the series. I just want to see what goes on. I'm curious. If they're still 19, maybe I'll skip it. But I'm hoping that maybe this was just like a little taste of what we're in store for. And the other 2 books are set a little further in the future when they're like mid-20s. Like that would be the only way that I continue the series, because I just don't, you know, whatever. I like the dynamics. I like the kinks that were showcased. I like the limits and the conversations and the communication and the trust. Appreciated all of that. It's really not that hard to do. Harley did in 144 pages what some people can't do in 600. And for what excuse? She even said at the end, like, an indie author like herself, it means a lot to get a review. So Harley was still able to come at us with this kind of thing, even though she's indie published, maybe self-published, and had to like do all of this stuff on her own. So it is possible. It is possible. And here we are, experiencing it together. This was special. Thank you for being here with me. Let me know if you liked this book. Let me know if you didn't. Just leave it in the comments. We can keep the conversation going. If you liked this video, consider liking it. It helps me out. And if you're looking for another way to support me, I have a bindery page where if you sign up, you get access to things like the Discord server, great little community over there, written reviews of books that don't make it to the channel necessarily, because not every book deserves a full deep dive hour-long review. Sometimes I just have a little bit of thought and it's pretty good, and that's what I say. Bonus content, vlogs, early access to rant reviews, and more. I really appreciate it, and I would love to see you over there. We have a really good time, and I really like creating like special bonus content for you guys. You can also join the channel as a member here and get members only access to videos here. There's a bunch of different ways to support me, and every single one of them means the world to me. Thank you so much. I will see you in the next video. I love you. You don't have to say it back. Bye.